Here's the carburetors. Going to be disassembling them today to clean them out. Seems like I have clogged up carbs that are making the engine run rough. I'll show you guys how to take it apart. So first thing, we need to remove the fuel lines coming out to the carburetors. Those two guys need to be removed. So first thing, we need to remove these fuel lines. That should come off like that. And proceed with the rest. So remove the fuel lines. Next we got to remove this breather hose. It goes from here, disconnect it. Next we got to remove these two bolts here to make sure that those are unscrewed. You can remove those. Those will come out like so. Okay, then remove those. So next step, we got to remove all these screws right here holding the carburetor to the intake. They'll be right here. All these little screws will be labeled. So start removing those guys one by one, like so. And they should be at just 10 millimeter. Let's remove those. So when you're removing these screws holding the manifold to the carburetor, there's a couple screws here that you remove. And this very bottom one here is very hard to remove. What helps is if you loosen this throttle cable and you slide it off like so, then you can actually get access to that last screw there. It's the most difficult one to reach in. And I just use a little 10 millimeter wrench to get to it like that. You should be able to reach that. So we got all that loosened up. Let's start removing this guy, like so. There's a couple pins right here holding it in place, so you want to be careful not to lose those right there. And then your breather hose will pull back with it. Those fuel lines as well will pull back with it. So we start removing this, like so. It's gonna be a couple wires that are gonna be holding on to the solenoid. You're gonna have to disconnect those. I'll show you how to do that. So if you pull back the carburetor, you'll notice there are two wires right here connected to the solenoid and another device. You just have to disconnect these two wires. It's gonna be that one and this one. And then this guy and this guy. Just have to disconnect them, and that should pull free from your carburetor. And what I did is I put a piece of brown tape on these two leads so that I know that they connect here and here, so that I don't accidentally swap those. Once we got that disconnected, this carburetor should slide out. You got your fuel line hoses coming out right here. It's gonna pop out like that. One's gonna come out here, and then your little breather tube should come out like this. There's your carburetor. So it should look like this. Got your carb sitting here. Got your intakes for the manifold. I'm gonna start taking off this next part so we can access the carburetor. Next, we're going to take off these screws right here. There's one on both sides. That's for the intake. That one's kind of hidden. That one right there, and the back side as well. Right there, those 4 screws to pull off this intake. So when you loosen these up, these come with the collar. Very long screws. Make sure you don't lose that collar. Put that with the rest of our stuff. And they go all the way through, as you can tell right there. They thread through. We're gonna loosen these up like so. Come out like that. So once you pull these bolts out, you should loosen everything up here. They should come apart like so. There's a plate here, but this will also loosen this gasket on this side, which you gotta pull off, like so. And then all these are gonna be loose, and they're held together by these fuel lines that you gotta disconnect. And there's linkages on the opposite sides. The big thing that you have to do is not mess with these linkages too much, just disconnect them, and I'll show you how to do that next. So next we gotta disconnect these linkages here, holding this together. All these guys, they just kind of snap off like so. Come off just like that. So you know how to take this off. Just go one by one, and remember the order that you got them in. So I got this linkage disconnected that was on here, like so. This one that was here disconnected. This is loose, and this one as well is on here. Next, you're gonna do these throttle linkages, and the way that they sit is they kind of slide into here like so. They slide out. So I got these two disconnected. I got these last ones that I'm gonna pull out, so that should disconnect the linkages for this butterfly valves. Next, after that, you would disconnect these fuel lines that run to this main distributor or whatever that is. So you see these 4 fuel lines. I'm gonna pop those off, and that should come apart. So I got these little tubes disconnected. Those are off. Next, we're gonna have to take off the spring here that's set in place like so. Let's see if we can do it this one hand. Basically, it clips on right there. You gotta push it, it'll slide off. And then there's another spring that's sitting right here on this part. It's connected to this right here. Show you how to do that here. The fuel line disconnected from these little throttle, or sorry, the fuel connectors. Loosen this up. Anyways, comes off like that. All right, got the carburetors disconnected. This part that I had trouble taking off was this spring right here. If you look, this linkage, this actually slides out. I didn't know that. Make it easier for you to disconnect it. So this is the top one with the fuel lines coming out of that. I'm not sure what that is for. To the next one, and so forth. Just make sure you don't lose your gaskets here or here as well. This is the part that I was having trouble disconnecting. It was the spring was sitting on this bottom little piece right here. You'll notice the spring is stuck in there. You just have to lift it off, and there's a gap that can slide down that way. That little spring that will be connected to that. So that pulls off. Now we have all our carburetors disconnected. Make sure you have them labeled. I have them labeled 1. This one is 2 right there with the Sharpie. They're all labeled so I don't mess them up. Now we gotta disconnect these pans for the floats and clean them out, and then reassemble it. Got our carburetor here. Got the cap off. And number 1 thing right there is the green residue. It's like gel. It's pretty dirty. Got your little float here. It's got a bunch of junk in there. That'll do it. Just little flakes like that. Little junk. See all that dust in there? We'll clog it up, clean it, put it back together. What I use is here. Parts cleaner, degreaser. Spray it out. Probably not like that. So I just took apart carburetor number 4. You can tell right there. That's your culprit. Look how much junk is in there. Oh man. That's a lot of junk in there. That'll do it.